Hey there, I'm Mel Abraham, the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Entrepreneur Solution, and the founder of Thoughtpreneur Academy, where we teach you how to capture, package, and monetize the ideas in your head, the wisdom and expertise you have, so you have more impact, more time, and more income. And welcome back to this episode of the Entrepreneur Solution Show. And in this episode, we're going to talk about this element of leadership, the different levels of leadership as I see it, and what it takes to shift and create movements, and how to lead from behind as a thought leader. And so in this episode, you also have the access to getting my tool called the Thoughtpreneur Expert Success Guide. You can download it by going to melabraham.com/session 060. Can't believe we're at episode 60, 60 plus actually, because we had a few extra ones in there. But welcome here, and I feel honored and blessed to have you here. If you're not at a place where you can download it at a computer, you can text me. Just text me my legacy, one word, to 38470. I'll send you the download link. We'll make sure that you get all the tools, all the templates, all the things that I have for you to help you with your success, to get your thought leadership out there, to get your practice up and running, to get your business up in a bigger way, and to create success in your lives. So let's get on with this episode. I happen to call this episode Lead the Pack from Behind: the 4 Stages of Leadership Progression. And one of the things to think about when we talk about leadership, if we don't get this right, why is it so important to be a leader? Well, if there's any question about why we need leadership in this country or in this world, just look around us. Look at what's going on in society. Look at what's going on with our crazy elections here in the United States even. And then ask yourself the question, do we need leaders? Absolutely we need leaders, and I believe that you are those leaders, that you are the ones that society and the public and globally they're looking for. And so here's the challenge. Here's why I think this is important, is that without leadership, without these skills, without elevating yourself to the highest level of leadership, things get messy. I mean, things don't go the way you want them. You don't get the results you want. It becomes a challenge, and you actually end up at the whim of other people's choices, other people's decisions. The second is that if you're not good at leadership, you're going to find yourself in a solitary pursuit. You're going to find yourself alone. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you have not mobilized champions and cheerleaders for a cause, for a movement, for a mission, if you will, towards an outcome. And you're going to be doing this on your own. And I got to tell you, it ain't fun when you're doing it on your own. So what we need to do is figure out what are the traits to bring people along in that process. And the third thing is that you're going to be inertia-full. In other words, you're going to move like a snail. I mean, without leadership, things aren't going to move. Things are not going to gel together. Things aren't going to move forward. You're not going to gain momentum in the process. But here's the cool thing. When you understand what you need to know, when you understand the key principles that I'm going to share with you here, things shift, things change. You're going to build momentum. You're going to build momentum in a way that things are going to start to move, and not just move, they move at an accelerating pace. I'll give you for instance, I know that in my practice and some of the things that I've done in my world, I was doing a lot of marketing and a tremendous amount of marketing at the very beginning. I'm not doing a tremendous amount of marketing today, but it's because I gained all this momentum. This momentum is really pushing me forward, and the phone rings, the clients come in, the projects come in, and we continue to grow. Now, I'm still coaxing it along, but not at the same level as I did before, because I was able to build that momentum. So when we get that, you have a lot of support and momentum behind you. The second thing I think is that you end up with a bigger vision. When you are perceived as a leader, when you are elevated to the level of leadership that I'm going to invite you to move to, you are seen as having a bigger vision, to look at things differently, to see a different perspective, to see a different world and a different possibility, and to try to bring that to life in the process as you move forward. And then the last thing I think is this: people will march with you. You're going to have champions, you're going to have cheerleaders, and you're going to have people marching with you, because ultimately you've created a movement. You've created a mission, people that get behind. It's a rallying cry that they move forward. It's not something of just mundane existence. It's not something that someone is going to just serve time, but it means something viscerally and emotionally to them, and they get behind you as a leader. So if that's really why, what do you need to know about leadership? What do you need to know about what I call the leadership progression model in doing this? And I think that there's a couple of principles to consider. One is that good leadership, I believe, good leadership is empathy-based. It's empathetic leadership. In other words, I understand the plight. I understand the journey of my team, my customers, my vendors, the people that are in my life, that I'm coming at it from their shoes, that I'm stepping into it from their perspective, and I'm taking the time to understand them so I can then understand how I can serve them. So that's the first thing. The second is that you're going to come at it from a communication perspective. I had a conversation just last night with someone at an HOA that was creating a divisive email, and he's saying, will you stand on my side on this? And I said, absolutely not. I said, the community, it's in a community where we own a property down here, and not necessarily where we live, but I said, your communication is creating divisive lines. What we need is to understand what community is about, what neighborhood is about. And it's about creating connection. It's about creating community and bringing people together. And the way that happens is through communication, not communication through necessarily just digital means and taking sides, but rather sitting in front of each other and understanding, going back to principle number one, empathetically where they're coming from, and coming from that place. And communication is the core to resolution. When we learn to communicate, when we elevate our ability to communicate, we start to change and shift people's lives through that communication. So communication is at the hub, the core skill, I think, when it comes to leadership. And then the third piece is that service is the fuel. We need, as leaders, to come from a place of service. This is not about what's in it for me, but what can I deliver to you? It's really coming from that place of serving our community, serving our team, serving society, serving a community need, serving a problem, a solution to those that are in need. Granted, in business, through that service, you get compensated. You may get compensated real well. And I don't fault anyone for that. In fact, I think you ought to be compensated when you're solving problems, when you're creating solutions, when you're bettering people's lives. Have no issue with that. What I want to make sure that is happening, though, is as a leader, you show up to serve. I'll give you for instance, a good friend and a client of mine, Gary Erickson, was the founder of Cliff Bar. He, at one point, before he founded Cliff Bar, was the manager of a bike shop. And the owner, he wasn't the owner, he was just the manager. And the owner of the bike shop comes in to find Gary cleaning the toilets. And the owner looks at Gary and says, hey, Gary, this is not what I pay you for. And Gary looks at him and says, oh, no, this is what you pay me for. He says, absolutely not. That's for them to do. Well, there's your first indication. For them to do. Okay? Absolutely horrendous statement. And he said, Gary looks at him, he says, you pay me to make sure that morale is high here. Is that correct? And he said, absolutely. And that our employees are performing. Is that correct? Yes. And they're performing at the highest level. Is that correct? Yes. That they show up and that they enjoy their work and that they're willing to get behind us to move through this. And he said, yes. He says, great. For us to do that, for that morale to be there, for them to show up that way, I need to be cleaning these toilets. I need to be being a role model. I need to be doing this differently. And I think that that's the thing that we need to come from, is a place of service. Who are you serving as a leader? Right now, if you look at your life, if you look at your business, if you look at your relationships, are you coming from a place of service? Or are you coming from a place of getting? I would submit to you, I would invite you to see what it would feel like and what it would do for you over time when you come from a place of service. Now, if you've always been coming from a place of getting, which I know that that's not the case because you wouldn't be here with me now because of the values that we talk about. So I think that I'm preaching to the choir here. But if you come from a place of getting and all of a sudden you're trying to shift to a place of service, there might be some people that go, ooh, what are they trying to get from me? And it'll take a little time for them to trust it. But trust me in saying that when you come from a place of service, that it serves everyone and everyone grows. So that's really kind of the three core principles. There's more, but these are the core principles that I want you to consider moving forward as a leader. And then take those principles and look at what I call the leadership progression model to understand where this starts to arrive. And it's a model, and it's a way I kind of look at leadership. And it's, to me, these are the 4 levels of leadership that create influence and change in people. And so if we look at this, as we move up the model, the level of influence that we have with our audience, with our marketplace, with our team, with the people that we're leading increases. And also you might even see that as that level of influence increases, the value placed on your leadership skills, the value placed on what you're able to produce and come out of there. Now, I'm not talking about just producing in the sense of products, but producing in the sense of impact and change. The value that's placed on that increases also. So as your level of influence increases, the value may increase also. But at the very base level, we have what I call taskers. Now, most of the time, which taskers, they're the doers, if you will. They're the ones that are in the trenches doing the heavy lifting. They may be on the assembly line. They may be the workers. They may be, and they are absolutely necessary. They're absolutely the core of the economy. They're the core of everything that we do. They operate, though, from a to-do list. They're taskers. What's the task? And they're checking off the to-do list. And so understand as I'm discussing these, I am not elevating them in the context of which is bad or good. They're all phenomenal. They all have their place. The question is, where do you want to operate and where do you choose to operate? It's not about bad or good. They all exist and they all need to exist at all levels in an organization, in relationships, in association. So don't look at this hierarchy or this progression as from bad to good, because they're all good. They all accomplish things and they're all necessary. The second level, once we move from tasker, is what I call manager. And most of the managers, when you talk about management, they focus on 2 things. Delegating, so they're the delegator. They're standing over and delegating some of the tasks to the taskers in many cases, or other managers. And what they're really driven by is not a to-do list. They're driven by process and systems. So they're managing processes and systems in there to allow them to get an outcome. And they're delegating to processes and systems, which could be technological or a human or labor intensive processes, until we then move beyond the construct of a manager and move one step above, which is what I call a leader. Now, the leader is really driven by what I think is vision. They're typically more visionary, and they show up much like Gary Erickson as a role model. Do as I do in that context versus do as I say. And so they're there to create the bigger vision for people to see, to get behind, to become part of that, and to create that bigger vision in that way, and to be a role model. To be the cheerleader, to be the one that says, yeah, this way, let's go. To really bring that home. Then there's this other level, and this is the last level, and this is the one that I'm going to invite you to try and elevate yourself to strive to, aspire to work to, and that's what I call a thought leader. And with a thought leader, as you move up this progression, they have the elements of those below. So you're bringing the characteristics of the lower levels with you as you come to this place. So thought leader still is visionary and still is a role model, but they focus on thinking. They're the thinker. And in the thinker, what they want to do is they want to create a movement. They want people to rally in a movement. And so when you look at these elevations and how this plays out, tasker, manager, leader, and thought leader are at various different levels, and they produce a certain type of result. For instance, the tasker is focused on completion. Their result is completion of the task, completion of the to-do list. Check it off, get it done. We need that. Everyone needs that in an organization, association, even in a family life. I mean, if the groceries, you get the groceries in the house and they sit in the bag, someone's got to complete the task, okay? Usually, hopefully, it's you guys together, working together, creating a relationship and doing things and supporting each other in the process. But the tasker is the result is completion. When it comes to the manager perspective, the result really is what we call consistency. And that's why they focus on process and systems, is they want to get a consistent result over and over and over again. If you think about some of the things that Michael Gerber wrote about in E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited and his whole series of E-Myth, it's about creating a process that gets a known result that is the same result each and every time. And he obviously uses McDonald's as a example of that. Let's, forgetting the health qualities or lack thereof in McDonald's, let's look at the process there. They created a process and a set of systems that allow you to get the same experience, hopefully the same experience from one McDonald's to the next. And so the question is, from a manager standpoint, is how do we make sure that we get consistency across shifts, across people, across systems, across processes, so when they get the taskers are getting the tasks completed, they get them completed in a consistent way and know that our quality is there. So the manager is focused on their result is consistency. Whereas the leader, and at these two levels, I think that we're looking at change in these two levels. The leader is focused on evolutionary change, allowing things to grow and shift and move in a direction that they wanted to move into a positive direction of growth and more impact in the process. And that's evolutionary change, as I call it. From there, we move to that thought leader. And this is where I think we can shift things tremendously, and I'll explain why. And that is revolutionary change. A thought leader creates revolutionary change, and here's why. The thought leader is a thinker. And what a thought leader does is he or she shifts the thinking, the thought process of the people they lead. And through that thinking shift, through that thought process shift, they shift behaviors. So if what we're really trying to do is create a behavior change in people, we need to first create a thought process change. And that's what thought leaders do. Thought leaders will take the time to dig in to what the conventional thinking, the conventional wisdom is, to analyze it, to dismantle it, to dissect it, and to put it back together and to lend to it some new perspectives. Maybe it's add-on perspectives that says, here's what others have done, and here's some other things that can add on to it. Or maybe it's contrarian perspectives to look at and say, here's what others have done, and here's, though, some things that maybe they didn't consider. But what their real focus is to expand the thinking and to shift the thinking of their readers, of their audience, of their marketplace. And through that shift of thinking, we shift behaviors. And it's through that shifted thinking that we allow ourselves to expand society, to do things different, to see possibility in a different light, to create movements, to create societal change, to create social change, to create environmental change. If you look back on the great changes in society, it's not just because they were doers and taskers. It's because they were thought leaders, that they went out there and they shifted the public's thinking on a topic, whether you believe in it or not, climate change or genetically, and I'm picking things that are emotionally charged, genetically modified foods or global warming or petroleum fuels, all of those things. You have thought leaders that are leading the charge to create what I call revolutionary change. Not this slow evolutionary change, which is great, but if we want to shift society, things like women to vote way back when, desegregation. I was literally just watching the movie Help recently, and it amazes me the kind of thought process that went in to looking at blacks and whites versus just looking at it as humanity. It appalls me that as a humanity that we can't elevate ourselves above that, or that we didn't elevate ourselves above that and see that. But it takes thought leaders to get out there and expand the thought process and say, what about this? And think differently. And through that thinking differently and that thought process of a different level, we shift behaviors. And it's through that shift of behaviors that we create change, and we create great change as we move forward. So here's my invite to you, is really to find your way to become a thought leader, to know that even though when you start to try and shift things, you're going to get pushback, you're going to get resistance, you're going to get ridicule, you're going to get people that fight you. You look at the people like a Gandhi, and what he did and how he was getting pushback and those types of folks. But if we really want to have a great impact, if we really want to shift things, we need to shift thinking first. That comes from a thought leader. We shift the thinking, we'll shift the behavior. When we shift the behavior, we shift the results. That's the equation as we move forward. So I invite you to try and to work your best to elevate to a thought leader. And if I can help you in that process, I hope you found value in this, because this is where I think our society needs you to think differently, to behave differently, to show up differently, to show them the way, to carry that beacon, to carry that light of change for them, to be okay with knowing that some people will push back on you as you move forward. And if you found this of value, make sure that you share it with a friend, because I really believe that this information in as many people's hands will make a difference in society. That's going to give you the opportunity to define your life, refine your life, and have a life that you've done by your own design, through your own thinking, to become your own thought leader in your own space, in your own time as you move forward. And if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe, stay with me. It's the only way that I get a chance to hang with you on a regular basis and give you the tools and the tactics and the strategies that I've used to build my businesses, my high-level clients' businesses, and give you the tactics that really work. And if you have a question for me, if you have a comment, just go to askmelnow.com and leave it for me. I'd be more than happy to maybe make it a topic of an upcoming episode on the Entrepreneur Solution Show. And again, if you want to download this episode's tool, the Thoughtpreneur Expert Success Guide, just go to melabraham.com/session060. That's melabraham.com/session060, or just text me. Text My Legacy, one word, no spaces, to 38470. I'll make sure that I get you the download link. And so, again, thanks for being here. Realize where you are in that progression. Realize that you have the ability to have all those elements, and if I can support you in that journey, in that progression to thought leadership, to build you in that space where people are following you, that you are leading the movement from behind because they're championing you. They're cheerleading for you and the cause that you've created. Just let me know. I'd feel blessed and honored to be on that journey with you. And until we get a chance to see each other in the next episode, may your vision be grand, your journey epic, and your legacy significant. See you soon. Cheers. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe so you get access to all of Mel's business and success tips. And if you like this episode, share it with a friend. If you have a specific business or success question, you can ask it at www.askmelnow.com. Remember, it's all about being bold, dreaming big, and living life your way. Because the world needs you. Until the next episode, may your vision be grand, your journey epic, and your legacy significant.